Salt, a seemingly humble and ubiquitous mineral, expends its energy, undergoes transformative changes, and remains abundant on our planet. It serves as a vital lifeline for humanity, bearing the radiant brilliance of human intellect. We trace the footprints of salt across Africa, Asia, Europe, and America, transcending regional boundaries, intimately connecting with human civilization and the chronicles of salt's history, observing the interdependence between humans and the earth. Within lies the essence of cruelty, courage, and fortitude, giving rise to poignant tales of the bond between man and nature. This is the tale of salt and earth, salt intertwined with life, salt for existence. This is where the salt was made. Like the Chinese in the Far East, they used single artificial ponds to evaporate seawater and make salt. In subsequent centuries, they mastered a more efficient multi-pond evaporation technology. Armed with this technique, Venice soon thrived. But the Venetians' appetite for wealth also grew. They wanted to monopolize salt production and trade in Venice and expand this monopoly beyond the city. Cervia, a seaside resort town in midsummer. Oscar Turoni is raking salt. He has been working at this salt works since he was 18. He's now 65. He and some other salt workers work as volunteers to show tourists the craftsmanship of Italian handmade sea salt from thousands of years ago. Seawater is brought into the salt pans through 3 filter ponds and eventually into the evaporation ponds. During this process, the saline concentration gradually increases. Sodium chloride begins to settle at the bottom of the ponds. In about a week, with the help of the sun and wind, salt crystals slowly get separated.
Ancora continuiamo a lavorare il sale, a raccogliere il sale come si faceva centinaia di anni fa. Quindi ecco, noi siamo nati allora, ancora andiamo avanti, siamo cresciuti. Ecco, qui naturalmente il sale viene raccolto tutti i giorni intercalando i bacini, ogni giorno si raccogliono 5-6 bacini, alla fine della settimana si è pulita tutta la salina, si è raccolta. Questo è un po' il sistema.
Venice not only controlled Cervia, to eliminate competitors, Venice built up a mighty navy and extended its reach to all salt production sites along the Italian coast, transporting the salt to Venice. The Venetian government set a high salt price, sold it to dealers, and dictated where it could be sold. So Venice became the largest salt supplier in Europe. Venice transformed from a backwater into a powerful state. Employment on a massive scale soon emerged here. Venice is therefore considered the birthplace of capitalism. Now, Italian salt, popular around the world, has long been produced mechanically. Only some original salt pans are left to showcase the ancient craftsmanship of salt making. It quietly tells the history. In the sun, these elders are working very hard. They are striving to recreate the method used for hundreds of years. They are paying tribute to history in this way.
È un'emozione mettere in fila tutti i granellini di sale per un percorso che ci porta alla una crescita identitaria nostra. Oggi come oggi qui si lavora moltissimo sull'identità.
The Venetians flourished through commerce. When they roamed and ran in the world of wealth, far in the east, in southwestern China, another city was building its fortune through industrial development. In Zhejiang, Sichuan Province, China, many people visit Yusan's tofu pudding eatery in the morning. A tofu and rice combo, 7 RMB is a breakfast for many Zhejiang people. Chili, combined with each eatery's special dip, is the secret to the delectability. This famous dish has a special relationship with well salt production. A large vat of ground soy milk is about to undergo a miraculous transformation. Yu San, the eatery owner, is very confident in his skill of coagulating the soy milk. The brine in the bottle is the leftover from processing the underground brine. Under the action of magnesium chloride, the liquid soy milk suddenly becomes viscous. Tofu pudding, cheap yet high quality, is appetizing and goes well with rice. Once the most popular delicacy among salt workers, it has the common characteristics of working-class food: crude, fast, cheap, and full of intense stimulation. Tofu pudding, made with the brine from salt making, is one of Zhejiang's signature dishes. If we are to find an iconic building in Zhejiang, many may choose the derrick for salt production, because it best represents the city's past glory and its industrial spirit. The Fuxi River flows slowly. The skyline, now empty, was once occupied by numerous derricks. Over 200 years ago, in the Qing dynasty, in densely packed salt works, the steam was rising. On both sides of the Fuxi River, taverns lined up. On the stone-paved road, peanut shells left by salt-carrying boatmen covered the ground. The Shanghai salt well was the first well in the world with a depth of over 1,000 meters. According to the salt price back then, the salt produced here every day was worth 533 taels of Chinese silver. At that time, a 7-rank county magistrate earned 45 taels of silver a year. The salt produced by a well in a day was equivalent to over 10 county magistrates' annual income. Wealth attracted people. Merchants from all over the country flocked to Zhejiang. In their views, with money poured into salt making, return on investment would exceed 100. This is the Yuchuan Ancestral Hall of the family of Wang Langyun, a salt tycoon at that time. Standing here, Song Liangxi was quite emotional. His grandpa was the steward here. What Song Liangxi saw, heard, and knew since childhood was all related to salt.
小时候啊，自贡到处都是天车，天车林立，监管是纵横啊。盐是这个巨大机器运转的核心，有人倾家荡产，有人一夜暴富。这块土地聚集了中国最爱冒险的人。
Grandpa told Song Liangxi that, over 100 years ago, Wang Langyun, the richest salt merchant, made his fortune from a deserted well. In 1833, Wang Langyun, 22, from a salt trade family, got his share of the family fortune, not much silver, and the abandoned Tianyi salt well. Zhejiang's brine layer is located deep underground. In the days when geophysical prospecting technology was not very advanced, drilling salt wells was tantamount to gambling. The Tianyi salt well was drilled to a depth of several hundred meters and stopped for lack of funding. Continuing to drill deeper might be his chance to turn the tide. Wang Langyun was a born adventurer. He made a desperate decision, betting all his money on the Tianyi salt well. Now they were quite close to the wealth buried deep underground. Workers in a group of 4 jumped onto the pedal. As they hopped up and down, the ropes drove the iron rod against the rock. For each hop, a kid nearby would throw a copper coin into the pot. With the coins clinking, workers on the pedals worked even harder. Their work was quite risky. Being a little careless, they might fall off the high pedal. The locals called the treading that drove the iron rod the prosperous hop. It meant that the workers' every hop would bring wealth. The Tianyi salt well had been drilled for years, but no brine was found. Wang Langyun was running out of money. He had 2 ways out: stop drilling and write off the loss, or find money quickly.
自贡最难的盐井开凿了40-50年才能找到卤水，所以说它的风险性很大。还有就是打下去以后，费了上万两、上10万两的白银，没水、没气，已经报销了。但是由于有高额的利润呢，总有成功的人，所以它的吸引力也特别的大。风险和利润并存，如果成功了，你就是富豪。
When Wang Langyun found himself in a dilemma, 2 Shanxi businessmen came to Zegong, ready to inject new funds into the drilling. But they dictated some harsh terms. Once the brine was found, the proceeds from the well would be divided into 30 shares. Wang Langyun, the well owner, had 12, the businessman 18. Within the agreed period of time, both parties should share the profits accordingly. After the contract expired, the salt well and the supporting facilities were returned to Wang Langyun. Wang Langyun had mixed feelings. Despite the injection of money, his future earnings would be reduced by more than a half. Faced with this contract, Wang Langyun was quite distressed. Before signing the contract, he received a call. He said that he wanted to answer the call of nature. He just walked down the street when a guy came running towards him, shouting excitedly, "Brine found in the Tianyi salt well!" It turned out that the Tianyi salt well was extremely rare. It not only produced black brine with extraordinarily high salinity, but also natural gas. Wang Langyun had found his first pot of gold, laying the foundation for his future fortune. The cooperation between Zegong merchants and Shanxi merchants did not end. The deeper the well was drilled, the more the investment was needed. Finding partners was the best choice for salt merchants. For the shared goal, they agreed on the distribution of responsibilities and rights and formed written agreements, well contracts. The Zhejiang Salt-Making Industry History Museum is housed in the Xiqin Guild Hall, built by Shanxi and Shanxi salt merchants in the Qing dynasty. In this building that combines the court style of the north and the folk style of the south, merchants from Shanxi, Shanxi, and Zhejiang often held talks and signed contracts. The contract they signed was a well contract. Over 1,000 well contracts are preserved here. The most famous one is the Tongsheng well contract. Considered the earliest joint stock company certificate, the first share of stock in China.
但是就是在这55平方公里的土地上，历代的盐工艰辛的劳作，一共开凿了13000多口盐井。如果以每口盐井300米计算的话，等于靠人力打穿了400多座珠穆朗玛峰。
Drilling technology was the secret of Zhejiang's wealth, but the biggest driver was the venture capital pouring in. Funds from all over the country set off a drilling frenzy. Zhejiang was dotted with derricks and bamboo pipes for transporting brine and natural gas. An industrialized city of an unprecedented scale emerged. Today, the towering oil platforms provide most of the energy in the world. And their technology principles are the same as the salt well derricks that once dotted Zhejiang. The drilling technology in Zhejiang reached its peak in the 18th to 19th centuries, with salt wells up to 1,000 meters underground, known as the father of oil drilling in the world. Cheshire in northwest England was the centre of the salt industry, almost during the same period as in China. Smoke enveloped this city. Iron pans, similar to the salt woks in Zhejiang, were boiling day and night to make the English coarse salt. Lion Salt Works, located in Northwich, Cheshire, was owned by the Thompson brothers family. In the 19th century, salt brought a century of prosperity to the family and Northwich. Today, the site is preserved as a museum. Mr. Thomas often comes round, since there are many memories of his youth. At that time, he lived near the salt works. His playmates all wanted to work part-time here.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, this was one of the popular places for unskilled young men to come and work because they could make quite a lot of money.
For over a century, this salt works continued the traditional way of making salt, boiling brine pumped from underground into large iron pans.
It was hard physical work. It was quite dangerous. If you fell into one of the evaporation pans, you were in severe difficulty, and there were no guardrails. The atmosphere was extremely hot, extremely damp, and not many people were able to work on the evaporation pans where the best salaries were. That's why the salaries there were very good.
Every Monday, the salt workers would shovel the salt from the iron pans and clean up the pans. At that time, people living nearby would hear the loud sound made by the iron pans. People jokingly called this sound the local alarm clock. The sound still rings in Thomas's ears. Salt is an important part of Cheshire's history. More importantly, salt was once a major British export. With vessels and warships, the colonists pushed huge quantities of salt overseas to acquire global wealth and created a myth that the sun never set on the British Empire. For over a century, the Thompson family shipped hundreds of tons of salt to the world via Liverpool every week, acquiring an enormous wealth. The brothers were very rich. They regularly organized trips for employees, paid for their employees' children's education, displaying their great wealth in a humane way. Elizabeth Royers, curator of Lion Salt Works, shows us the salary book and 1948. Here are the dates of their work, the time, the amount of salt produced, food expenses, holiday records, etc. Most importantly, it shows that the salt works was sliding into decline.
We can also tell from the book how much salt was being produced or how many orders they had in, because you can see here the 23rd of September 1947, these 19 people were working on site to produce salt. But if we go back a month to the 15th of July 1947, these people were making salt on site, and these extra 3 people here had been brought in from the local Sunbeam Works to help them make more salt because they had so many orders on.
In Cheshire at that time, there were dozens of traditional salt works of a similar scale to the Lion Salt Works. They frantically pumped brine from underground. Cheshire was covered with soot. The land was polluted and subsiding everywhere. Despite the incredible wealth created here, it was the most polluted place in Britain. In the mid-20th century, vacuum salt processing, invented by the British, impacted the traditional salt-making industry in Cheshire. The refined salt produced by the new technology cost less money, had better quality, and caused less pollution. Many large salt works began to get relocated and undergo transformation. Lion Salt Works, owned by the Thompson family, eventually had to close. The descendants of the family moved elsewhere and quit the salt industry. The relics and the production tools left quietly tell the story of the great wealth salt once created for this area. Today, almost no cuisine is made without salt. At 4 a.m., the seafood market in London begins its day, with various seafood displayed in the stalls. This is the oldest seafood market in Europe, dating back over 300 years. There are too many fresh ingredients to choose from. Kipper is a favourite of some people. The restaurant where chef Des McDonald works has a name featuring the word salt, known as vintage salt. Its signature breakfast is kippers, carefully prepared by Chef McDonald.
So here at Vintage Salt, we just showcased 3 of the dishes that we typically might do, trying to bring the old-fashioned kipper back into fashion. So the first one is a traditional cooking method what used at breakfast in the higher classes of England maybe 100 years ago. Slow poached kippers with a little bit of butter, finished with a parsley, caper and lemon butter.
In British history, kipper once took an extraordinary position, for salt was very precious, and the process of making kippers was very complicated, so only the rich could enjoy them. Now, Chef McDonald uses ready-made kippers from the market and adds different ingredients. He dreams of bringing kippers back into fashion. Chef McDonald takes pride and satisfaction in his work. Today, kippers served in the form of fast food remind urbanites not to forget that salt was once as precious as gold. Access to salt meant access to unlimited prosperity and wealth. In the 13th century, Marco Polo, a Venetian, went through numerous difficulties and dangers and finally reached China, an ancient and magical land. He described excitedly in his travelogue, "Between the city and the coast, there were many salt works, producing much salt." This place is Yangzhou in Jiangsu province, a floating city in the east, with the Yangtze River to the south and the sea to the east. Like Italy's Venice, Yangzhou was a city of salt production and trade. Coincidentally, Marco Polo, who was from Venice, also experienced the charm of Yangzhou, the Venice of the East. It was the most prosperous city hundreds of years ago. Walking through the landscape of Yangzhou today, whether through examining the legacy or the legends, a pool, a building, and even an autumn leaf tell the tale of the enormous wealth that was once created in this city. People in Yangzhou start their day with morning tea in this century-old tea house. The best Huaiyang pastries cannot be missed. "80-year-old Mr. Mao is a Yangzhou native. He returned home after having worked in Shanghai for many years. He still has the habit of morning tea.
我会是吃烫干丝，这是还有三丁包，这个爱好这些东西。早上呢就是这个皮包水，晚上呢爱好洗澡，水包皮，早上爱好喝茶。这是我们扬州人的这个老的传统习惯。
Having a cup of tea in the morning, eating delicacies while chatting, heading to the bathhouse to relax at night. Perhaps this is the happiest life. This is a reflection of the life Yangzhou residents had in the past, and a remnant of salt merchants' extravagant lifestyles. Although Yangzhou has long lost its aura of wealth, the salt merchant culture of the past is still very much alive. In almost all the stories of wealth, politics was involved. The rise and fall was due to politics. For Yangzhou salt merchants, real wealth began with the salt quota. Zhu Zheyong is a local collector. These collections have been accumulated over the past decade in his spare time. Interestingly, all of these are related to salt.
这个在当时来说，应该算120引的话，应该算一个比较大的一次盐引的税收，估计买一个庭院应该是不成问题了。
During the Ming and Qing dynasties, salt quota, to put it simply, was a license to buy and sell salt. Salt was not produced in Yangzhou, but Yangzhou enjoys a favorable location. It is at the confluence of the Yangtze River, the Huai River, and the Grand Canal. The Lianghuai Salt Works, the largest salt works in ancient China, was located here. The salt produced, via water, was shipped everywhere. Yangzhou was the seat of Lianghuai Salt Administration and the largest salt transfer station in China. Merchants all wanted to obtain salt quotas from court officials, because this thin paper license, a permission to sell salt, meant a chance to get rich.
朝廷给盐商制定了一个非常优惠的政策，任何天下的商人，只要按照朝廷的规定交纳一定的金钱，然后就可以到扬州来做一个世袭的盐商。
Mao Jian, a girl born and raised in Yangzhou, was busy putting on makeup. It is her big day today. Her wedding takes place in a famous salt merchant's mansion, Geyuan Garden. This is a distinctive group wedding, referring to salt merchants' marriage rites in ancient times. Dressed in costumes from the Republic of China, the newlyweds slowly walk through the century-old mansion. In addition to morning tea, the gardens are the epitome of Yangzhou culture. Geyuan Garden is the largest salt merchant garden in Yangzhou. Visitors can marvel at salt merchants' enormous wealth back then. This private garden boasts exquisite detail and an ingenious layout that shows what extravagant lives these merchants led. Even as Yangzhou natives, Geyuan Garden is still unfamiliar and mysterious to these young people. This wedding, with its homage to the past, fascinates and excites Mao Jian and the groom. In Yangzhou, in the Ming and Qing dynasties, rich salt merchants spared no effort to build their mansions. These distinct mansions embody the owner's different tastes. In their heyday, the Kangshan thatched cottage stood out. It is salt tycoon Jiang Chun's residence. In 1751 AD, salt merchants in Yangzhou were busy preparing for an important reception. Jiang Chun, 30, was an Anhui salt merchant living in Yangzhou. Although at a young age, he topped the list of 8 salt trade tycoons in Lianghuai. At present, his residence, Kangshan thatched cottage was a busy place. Jiang Chun was preparing to welcome his top benefactor, Emperor Qianlong. For the first time in history, 40-year-old Qianlong left Beijing and visited southern China. The first stop on his itinerary was Yangzhou for its beautiful scenery and because it was a cash cow for the state.
明朝和清朝一样啊，国库里面，如果它是一个烧饼，它有一半啊是来自盐业的，在盐业的这个一半里面啊，又有一半啊是来自扬州，就是扬州盐商所贡献的税金，占了明清两个朝廷国库收入的1/4，这是一个非常了不得的一个数字。所以皇帝他重视这个地方，并不是对扬州盐商本身有什么兴趣，主要是对他的政权特别重视。政权的周转的资金有1/4是依靠这个地方的商人，他当然要跟这个地方的商人要搞好关系。
Before Qianlong came, after many inquiries, Jiang Chun knew Qianlong's preferences for food. Qianlong spoke highly of the dishes Jiang Chun arranged. Jiang Chun had another way to please Qianlong. Salt merchants in Yangzhou liked to sponsor opera troupes. These troupes mainly consisted of Anhui artists, also known as Hui troupes. Jiang Chun kept 2 troupes at home, De Yin and Chun Tai, which could perform thousands of plays.
春台班唱的是地方戏，这个德音班唱的是昆山腔，这2个戏班啊是一雅一俗。这皇帝来了以后，他喜欢雅的，我就给他唱这个德音班唱戏；唱俗的呢，就让春台班唱戏。所以他是一个非常精明的一个商人。
Qianlong was quite satisfied with the performances at the cottage. After returning to Beijing, he could not forget the plays he watched in Yangzhou. For his 80th birthday, Qianlong specially asked 4 Anhui troupes, including Chun Tai, to come to Beijing, regarded as the prelude to the birth of Peking opera. Qianlong was moved by Jiang Chun's meticulous reception. There was a rare personal relationship between the most distinguished emperor and a humble businessman. Jiang Chun received many benefits in return. According to official records of the Qing dynasty, during Qianlong's 6 trips to Jiangnan, Jiang Chun and other salt merchants spent as much as 11.2 million taels of silver, and Qianlong seemed to know how to return the favor. Jiang Chun was awarded the title of provincial governor and granted the title for 4 generations, and became the top merchant official. A white pagoda stands in the slender West Lake, the most famous site in Yangzhou. According to legend, when Qianlong was touring slender West Lake, he remarked that it resembled the one in Beijing's Beihai Garden, but unfortunately there was no white pagoda. Upon learning this, Jiang Chun promptly had a white pagoda built overnight. The authenticity of this legend cannot be verified, but Yangzhou salt merchants obviously had a honeymoon period with the emperor. However, this honeymoon ended with the outbreak of the Lianghuai salt quota case. The party for Yangzhou's salt merchants quickly came to an end. One night, a secret letter was sent from Beijing. 2 days later, it was delivered to the former Lianghuai salt administrator. Oddly enough, the letter contained no words, just a little tea and salt. This aroused suspicion of the former Lianghuai salt administrator. It turned out that, just a few months ago, Qianlong received a secret communication. The communication exposed embezzlement of 10 million taels of silver that had been covered up for 22 years in Lianghuai. Outraged, Qianlong issued 8 edicts demanding a thorough investigation. The T in the letter represented a hidden meaning, that the emperor would thoroughly investigate the deficit in the salt industry. In July, the salt merchants in Lianghuai turned from targets into important witnesses for the investigation. Jiang Chun went to Beijing to plead guilty on behalf of Yangzhou salt merchants. Jiang Chun knelt before Qianlong. As a cooperating witness, he confessed to his crimes, including bribery of over 100,000 taels of silver, taking charge of many officials' private expenses. In response to Jiang Chun's confession, Qianlong ultimately showed mercy. He dismissed the title of provincial governor bestowed on him and forgave his past misdeeds, requiring Jiang Chun to run the business well. The Lianghuai salt quota case was still a major blow to the industry. In the following 11 years, Jiang Chun and the other salt merchants paid 11.2 million taels of silver to the government to compensate for their fraud. Their wealth disappeared. In his later years, Jiang Chun was no longer a big shot. The salt merchants' wealth, without exception, was impacted by the hand of politics. With the move of a hand, wealth appeared and then vanished. With this hand moving, salt merchants experienced a rise and fall. Time and again, they could not escape their fate. The emperor did not want to wipe out the salt merchants. He needed them to compensate the loss and continue making money. Salt could give rise to a rich class of salt merchants and bring wealth to the state. In the Ming and Qing dynasties, tea, salt, silk, water transport of grain were the lifeline of China's economy. And the salt tax accounted for a quarter of national fiscal revenue. Salt, for a city or even a state, was as important as life itself. With such a long history, its story would continue to impact the world.